here at the Minnesota State Horticultural Society. Tonight's presenter is Amanda Yadav. If you are not a member of MSHS, now is a good time to join. Members receive not only our award-winning magazine, but also discounts at nurseries and greenhouses, free tickets to our local home show, free webinars, and more. Your membership dollars also allow us to bring great programming like this to all of you. Join me in welcoming tonight's presenter, Amanda Yadav, a Minnesota native who grew up in a family of gardeners and started growing microgreens to keep her green thumb in shape during the long Minnesota winters. She now owns Fiddlehead Farm, LLC, and grows a menu of over 45 different varieties of microgreens for restaurants, co-ops, and farmers markets in the Twin Cities area. Take it away, Amanda.
Thank you. So excited to be here and to share about microgreens with you. I could talk about microgreens all day. It's kind of insane. So I'm really excited about this. The kit that you are sent gives you the supplies to do everything from a basic grow with some brassica mix and just a standard potting soil to being able to experiment with some different herby varieties and different types of growing. So it's kind of an all-encompassing kit, so you don't have to be like, oh, I wonder what it would be like to grow in a hydroponic mat and have to be, buy 50 of them and not really know. So this kind of gives you, it's an experimentation kit. It's a lot of fun. And feel free to, like Deborah said, to type in questions as we go along. I'm more than happy to ask. If you have questions after the webinar, email me. I'm super happy to answer any questions that you might have with your grows or anything that we've covered in this presentation. So we got some slides, and I'm going to go in between slides and kind of demonstrating some things from your kit. All right, so about the farm, it's expanded since I did this slide, over 45 microgreen and herb varieties that I grow. I'm not a certified organic, but I do grow with organic methods and sustainability in mind. People often ask if I'm hydroponic, and I'm not 100% hydroponic. Some varieties do better with a soil mixture or COCO. So I grow in the way that the plants like to be grown, is kind of that's my philosophy. If a plant doesn't like to be grown hydroponically, then I'm not going to grow it that way. You just end up with a healthier plant if you kind of go with what they like. After all, it is a living thing, so you have to keep that in mind. And I do have my farm calendar on my website, so if you have, if you're out and about looking for a farmer's market or another class or activity, check that out. So there's more than one way to grow, and that is okay. That is one thing that I kind of want to stress in this kit in this class, is that you may like to grow in a small container, a big container, a takeout container. You might like to use COCO or hydroponic mats. There's a multitude of different ways to grow, and whatever suits you is what you should do. Don't let anyone tell you that you have to grow on mats or you have to grow in soil. The trays that I provided you are some of the trays that I use in my growing in the farm. They're super heavy duty. I've had mine for over 3 years, and they get abused for sure. The growing medium, like I said, there's tons of different kinds, and we're going to go over I think four main types here. What I use in my farm is a sterile seed germination mix, and I mix it up with some COIR and perlite. What you want is kind of a light, fluffy grain. You can also use hydroponic mats. There's so many varieties of those. It's unbelievable. There's hemp, jute. There's COIR mats. There's also loose COIR, which is not, some of it's loose, but some of it is in puck form, and we'll look at the puck form tonight. Seeds. High quality seeds are really important. I only use and sell untreated non-GMO seeds. I do choose organic when possible. Sometimes it's not possible, but they are always untreated and non-GMO. I do use a sprouting seed quality, So what that means is that I don't go to like Whole Foods and check out their bulk section. I know a lot of people have some pretty good luck with that, but those seeds are seeds, and they're generally sold there, and they're meant to be cooked, and we're not cooking them, so I just feel better not using those. Water and light. They'll need a moderate amount of indirect light after germination to grow nice and happy. You can have, if you have a nice window, they'll do well there. If you do need to add some extra light for some of the longer grows, we're going to talk a little bit about those. You do have to water your microgreens. That's one of the common things is people forget, and then they start to wilt, and then they're sad. All right, so different types of growing medium. There's a potting soil or a seed starting mix, and you can get that at your local garden center. COCO, that comes in pucks or bricks. I have seen it loose in bags, but mostly you see it in pucks or bricks. Hydroponic mats, we did give you one hydroponic mat in the kit. Like I said, there's a bunch of different varieties of those. And then the newest one that I have not yet tried is hydroponic screens. I have some of those on order, so I'm excited to just see how that goes and kind of update everyone there. So this Pro Mix is what I use in my farm. I use an organic, multi-purpose seed starting mix. You can find all different varieties at your local garden center. And if you don't like how it feels, you can always add some COCO to make it a little bit fluffier. One thing you don't want to use is compost or garden soil. There's too many microbes and bugs, and garden soil is too heavy. You want something really light and kind of fluffy. So COCO, if you've never used it, it's this natural husk in the middle part here from the coconut, and they cut that out, and then they soak it and treat it, and then either compress it into big bricks, pucks, or mats. And so I'm going to show you what the process of using some COCO, like the pucks that you have in your kits here. Stop. Okay, so how do I make it show me?
You're good. It is.
Oh, I'm not seeing that.
We can see you.
Okay, I just have to, okay. Ooh. See you. Okay, there we go. All right, so we got these, in your kit you have these pucks, and what we're gonna do is add some water to these guys. And one thing that I've learned is that make sure that you have a really big container, because they will surprise you with how big they go. Usually about a cup or so of water for these guys, and you can see they're already starting to expand. And if you get too much water in them, you can always just squeeze it out. You can just watch it just kind of sucking up the water. Let me just break it up. A little bit more there. It's all right if it's a little bit wet. That just means that when you actually plant, you're not going to have to moisten the seeds as much, because you got a pretty good mixture there. So you can see that those two little pucks, this is a really big salad bowl. It really filled it up. Now you just take your tray. And I like to put the dome, have the dome underneath it, and that catches any little bits of soil or cocoa. when you're filling your containers, no matter what type of container you use, you always want to make sure that you go pretty close to the top, because your microgreens are really, they're going to be pretty short for the most part, and you don't want to have to dig down in there to get them out when you're ready to plant. One of the basic things for planting microgreens, no matter what what medium you're using, is to make sure that you have a really flat surface. So this may seem flat, but there's kind of lumps and bumps everywhere. So I like to take another tray and just kind of smush it. So this is where like the OCD in me can come through, and it is like super flat. When you're planting, you want to make sure that your seeds are evenly spread, no matter, like I said, no matter what medium you're using. So I'm going to use some, what do I got here? I have alfalfa seeds, and those show up really well against the dark background here. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to see kind of what we're doing. And just sprinkle them around. And if you are more of an outdoor gardener, your heart might be palpitating a little bit with the amount of seeds that I'm using. It's okay. It's the microgreen world versus the gardening world, the outdoor gardening. So you've got your seeds, you've got your soil. Just give them a light mist, and they're good to go. So that's about it for COCO coir. It's very similar to like a garden soil, that type of thing. So that's kind of an alternative if you don't want to store bags of soil all winter or summer, I guess, too. You can buy the little pucks or the bricks and be good to go.
We do have a couple of questions,
Yeah.
Amanda.
Yes.
The first one is, Dawn wants to know if there is a list of what varieties of plant grow best in which mediums, or if it's just kind of a try it and find out sort of situation.
So there's not necessarily a list, but with the seed varieties that I gave you, I did list if it does not work well, like on a hydroponic mat. More of your bigger seeds, sunflower, buckwheat, cilantro, those don't work so well on a hydroponic mat. Everything works well in cocoa and in soil. That's kind of just more your preference on what you like to use there. It's more of the hydroponic mats are a little bit finicky with the different varieties.
Okay, and the other question is, when you are flattening out the surface of, like you just did, how do you make sure that you're not compressing? Like how hard can you push so that you don't end up compacting everything that you just fluffed up?
It's just a gentle press to get it even. You don't want to really smash it in there.
Okay. Great.
All right. So let's not sure why it's not staying in present mode here. All right, so hydroponic mats. The one that came in your kit is made of compressed wood fiber and is completely compostable. One thing that I've learned with these is that you should wet the mat before you spread your seeds. If you don't wet the mat, then the seeds just kind of bounce everywhere. Even if you just give it a light mist before you sprinkle your seeds. With the mats also, they do tend to dry out quite a bit faster than COCO coir or soil. So you just kind of keep an eye on it to make sure that it's not drying out. And then it's also, for some versions of the mats, it's harder for the roots to get down in there. So during germination, you want to apply some weight, and you can do that by just stacking another tray on top of it. And you can put a soup can or something like that on top of it. And that just gives it a little bit of weight to compress everything and kind of force those roots to go down. You can see here, this is one of the mats like in your kit. You can see some of the roots kind of going up in the air. And that just means that I didn't put enough weight or wait it long enough. So with lighting, a lot of the, I don't want to say easier to grow varieties, the shorter duration, just a lot of natural light isn't all they need. If you don't have a lot of natural light or you just need a little bit of a boost, you can use these type of bulbs if you have like a desk lamp or something, if you're not into having like a full-on lighting situation in your house. I use the sun blasters. They're a T5 light, and they do really well as far as growing if I don't have enough light. In my grow space, I have zero sunlight, so I really do need something that can really give it what it needs there. So that's why I use these in my farm. So when you're planting or growing, I don't know if any of you have grown microgreens and it just doesn't work out. These are some of the most common things that can happen. You get uneven germination right here. You kind of petered out. You get mold. You forget to water and they get droopy, or you get fungus gnats. And those are those little bugs that are pesky and fly around there. So uneven germination is caused by uneven misting at sowing time. The seeds are drying out during germination or not soaking seeds that do require soaking. And I do have a list of seeds that like to be soaked at the end of the slide presentation. Another thing is uneven or no pressure during germination. So pressure isn't 100% necessary, but it does help all of the seeds to come up at the same time. This particular tray, it was due to a fan. I had a fan that was angled at it and it dried out. I did re-wet this and it did come up later, but it was, you know, almost after this part was ready to be harvested. So when you're taking a little bit of extra time when you're planting and getting those seeds really nice and moist is probably the #1 thing to do to have all of them come up at the same time. And then making sure you're purchasing a high quality seed. Seeds that you find like just in the garden section don't have quite as high of a germination rate as specific microgreen seeds. So there's not anything different between the seeds necessarily, just the seeds that are harvested for microgreens they have a higher germination rate, they're a higher quality, they come from a plant that just has really, you know, all of those seeds want to go. Your garden seeds might just have a little bit of a lower germination rate, so you're going to see some spots in there that aren't growing, and if you have seeds that aren't growing, then you can get the dreaded mold. And this is a case, this picture cracks me up. This is like horrific mold. You shouldn't ever see anything like this. This was a tray of amaranth that was posted in one of the Facebook microgreens groups, and this was caused by overwatering and extraordinarily high humidity. So that's what the causes of mold are: the overwatering, lack of airflow, contaminated growing medium, bad seed, or a too high temperature during germination. So germination, you want your temperature to be like 75 or less. It's not, you just don't want it like really hot and really humid because bad things happen then. So if you do get mold, you can spray it with a food grade hydrogen peroxide. You can also just scoop out the moldy portion and fill it in with some clean medium. That works really well. When you do that, you do want to scoop a little bit extra around. And then one trick that I've learned is to, if it's like a larger seed, like a pea seed, a radish, sunflower, and it just kind of got like a spider webby over it, if you top water and spray that with water, and give it good airflow, the water kind of breaks up the structure of the mold, and you don't have to worry about it anymore. It's gone. It's kind of amazing what airflow can do. It doesn't have to be like a high-powered fan. Just a little bit of a breeze keeps everything good. So we get mold versus root hairs. So you're gonna see this in a lot of your trays, and this is okay. This is perfectly natural, perfectly normal. These are root hairs. The main way to tell the difference is that they are gonna come straight off of the root right here, where this one is kind of a spider web over the top of the whole thing. So if you happen to get just a little clump of this, just spoon it out and fill it in with some clean grow medium, and you should be good to go. This section was likely caused by maybe too many seeds in one area, or a tray that was not even. So when it was watered, all the water kind of pooled to one side, and it got a little bit funky there. But you're going to see a lot of this, and it's natural. When you grow microgreens, because you're planting on top of the soil, you're going to see a lot more action than when you're gardening and it's all beneath the soil level. So
we have another. Oops,
yeah.
sorry. We have another question. Are you getting to more on weighing down seeds later, or?
Yes. We'll
okay.
Yep.
Then we will hold on this question.
Okay. So the drooping microgreens is going to be due to inconsistent watering or lack of airflow or too much direct airflow. If you have a tray, this tray is, I can tell that it's got like a dip in the middle where it's been bottom watered, and all the water is kind of going towards the center, so these edges aren't getting enough to drink during the day. This can also happen if you have a fan on your tray and just a portion will kind of dry out there. So just moving it to an area with less direct airflow, or if you can add a moisture retainer like the COCO to your potting mix, that is also really, really helpful to keep an even moisture with the roots there. So fungus gnats are the #1 pest that you're gonna find with your microgreens. They love it because it's damp. It doesn't happen as much with the shorter growing varieties, just because you're in and out 10 days and it's gone. But if you're planting basil and it's sitting around for 4 weeks and you overwater it, that's like perfect conditions for them. And the female can lay up to 300 eggs at once. So a little problem can turn into a big problem pretty quickly just for that reason. And the #1 thing you can do is do not overwater. If you let your microgreens sit in a waterlogged tray, you're gonna get little bugs. And fans are really helpful. These gnats are not very strong flyers, and so if they can't land and lay their eggs, then they can't do that 300 eggs damage there. Sticky traps, those will help reduce with the number of adults. If you don't like to look at a bunch of dead bugs around your kitchen or wherever you've got your microgreens, this catchy thing right here is kind of a fun little gadget that it's got a fan in there, and then the light kind of sucks them up, and then they get stuck to a little trap at the bottom, so you don't have to stare at a bunch of dead bugs all day. All right, so I'm gonna show you planting basil. And basil is 3 to 4 weeks from sow to harvest. It grows well on all varieties of growing medium. Some people do put a little bit of like an organic fertilizer around week 3 or 4. I don't find that's extremely necessary unless you really want to keep your plant growing. But as microgreens, they're supposed to be tiny. 70 degrees is a good germination temperature. They like it a little bit on the warmer side than some of the others. They will germinate just fine at lower temperatures. My room is about 65 and they do just fine. For stacking, I know we had a question on stacking. This is like one variety that you do not stack. We germinate it with the dome on, and you can leave that dome on until these baby leaves right here, the kind of rounded ones, start to grow outward and kind of cover the soil, and so that it doesn't dry out. And then for harvesting basil, the herbs are kind of the one that are a little bit different than other microgreens in that you can let them go a little bit longer. So with microgreens, we talk about the cotyledon, or those first baby leaves, and you don't want to let your microgreens grow longer, otherwise they start to change flavor, like broccoli or sunflower. You don't want it to start hitting those true leaves. Basil, cilantro, your herbs, you can let those go and they are just fine. So right here, we have those leaves that are starting to look a little bit more like the basil you see in your garden or in the store. And that's okay. It's more flavor, it's more, more herb for you. There's nothing wrong with that. So here we have a slide of kind of the three stages of the growing of the basil. So the germination stage, the basil gets this coating, this gel coating on it, and this is the reason we don't want to stack the basil. Other varieties don't have that coating, and so those are perfectly fine to stack. If you stack basil, the seeds are going to get stuck to your upper tray, and it's kind of game over at that point. So when they grow, you're going to see the cotyledon, the first baby leaves, the rounded ones, and then when they're ready to harvest, you can harvest them at this stage. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to wait, you can wait until they do get some bigger leaves, and then it's just more fun to eat because there's just more of it. And it's super, super tasty. All right, so with any variety that you're planting, some basic tips are you just want to use that misting bottle to moisten the seeds, and it also helps to, like if you're using the mat, it helps to prevent the seeds from moving around a little bit. And then really take time to create that flat surface. If you get a little dip or a divot and you get 5-6 seeds in there, that's when you can have problems with mold. Germination is usually about 3 days for your standard varieties. The basil and the cilantro are a little bit different. They just take a little bit longer just because they grow a little bit longer. And then soaking your larger seeds, it helps shed the hull. It helps that root come out just a little bit faster. And I do have a list included in the slides. It's going to have a list of the seeds that really do like to be soaked. So a little extra care during the planting step can really go a long way. So, all right, we're gonna do some basil here, and I'm gonna use just the potting mix that I use in the farm here. And because basil is naturally just a shorter variety, I want to get it really close to the top. Basil is only going to grow maybe about 1 inch high, so that doesn't leave a lot of room for scissors and knives. So you can see I've filled it a little bit higher than when I did the alfalfa. I'm going to get a nice flat surface there. A common place is around the edges. If you're using a different container, a different style planter, if it's got rounded edges, you just want to make sure that those your seeds don't kind of fall into those areas. So basil seeds are tiny and they're a little bit hard to see. If you want larger basil leaves, plant less seeds. If they overcrowd, then they won't get as big. But if you want nice, tiny little microgreens, it's okay to hefted in there. So we've got the seeds in there, and we're gonna give them a mist. And when you have tiny seeds, just a very gentle one at first, just to kind of get them stuck to the soil. And then we're looking for that blue coating, and that just takes a few minutes for it to kind of show up. And if you're not sure, if you've got like bad eyes and you can't tell what's going on with your basil seeds, go ahead and throw a few down, spray it up, and then you can kind of see if you've missed some spots, and then you can go ahead and add some more seeds in there. So I can already see these are starting to turn blue a little bit. And I mentioned that basil is one that you should not stack, and it's because of that gel coating on there. And we're just going to use the dome. And the dome has these holes, these vents that you can use. There's no set method for if you should use them, what variety of that type. My kind of test is I usually leave them closed, and if I'm getting a lot of condensation on the sides, then I'll open the vents up or kind of place it kind of kitty corner on the tray just to give it some airflow, but to also just keep it from drying out. So you can see it's got that blue, kind of that bluish tint to it. And you want to have that bluish tint all the way until you see the roots coming out. If it starts to turn back to black, that means that you're not misting it enough, and then the seed just doesn't have enough water to continue growing. So you just give it a little mist. When I do basil, I usually check it twice a day, just until it starts to get the root. And it's about a week before it's really kind of coming into its own. So I would just take this, put my dome on, and this is good to go and germinate. With the basil, it doesn't have to be in the complete dark. It can be. It's not like the other varieties where they really do need the dark. So I would just let this go. And basil is going to be ready in about 3 to 4 weeks, just depending on how big you want it to be. So you can see the blue coating is really puffing up, and everyone's happy in there.
Amanda, did you say what that blue coating is?
It's a mucilaginous gel. It's part of the seed. It's nothing that's been added to it. It's just basil seeds have that. Arugula has a little bit of it, but it's not quite the same.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so cilantro. This is another longer growing one. This one is only about 2 to 3 weeks from sow to harvest. This one is not hydroponic friendly. I find that it grows really well if you cover it with either soil or COCO coir. It helps shed the seed hull. It's kind of a sticky one on there. And I soak my seeds overnight. And occasionally I will allow them to germinate a few days before planting, and they'll get that little seed tail on there. Right here you can see some seed hulls that are stuck to the plant, and there's nothing wrong with them. Some people just prefer not to eat them, but it's basically coriander, so it's safe to eat. And so this is where waiting can really come in handy if you have seeds that really like a good hug. Cilantro, Swiss chard, and we'll kind of show that when I plant the cilantro here. There's 2 different kinds of cilantro seeds. There's split seeds and there's whole seeds. So more than likely in the garden center, when you're purchasing cilantro, you're going to get the whole seed. It's going to be nice and round. and two cilantro plants are going to come from that one seed. And when you do microgreens and you're harvesting them so soon relative to growing a full-grown cilantro plant, you're going to get a lot of seed hulls stuck to them. And so I prefer to buy and use the split seed. So this is kind of a progress of how cilantro grows. So this right here is seeds that have been pre-germinated. So they've been soaked overnight, and I've drained them and let them sit for probably about a week. And that tail is just about 1/4 of an inch long. It's not very long, but it's enough just to kind of give it a little bit of a head start. And it also really softens up the seed hull so that when it does grow, it looks a little bit more like this right here and a little bit less like this here on the edge. So these right here are experiencing their first moments of light. So when you germinate it and you plant it, and it's all growing underneath that soil level there, when it starts to poke through and you can see the stem and you can see the leaves, and it looks like it's left most of those seed hulls behind, it's ready to go in the light. And then it's going to be growing. This is probably cilantro at about 14 days, I would say. It has the longer cotyledons, so those are the first baby leaves. It doesn't have that traditional cilantro leaf like this tray here does. And you can eat it at this stage, you can eat it at this stage. It doesn't matter. This is just going to give you a little bit more than this stage. Either way is completely fine. Like I said, with the herbs, they can go a little bit longer. You got a bigger window of time to enjoy them. So I'll show you what it's like to plant some cilantro here. Let's see, guys. Oops. All right, so I'm going to plant cilantro in potting mix again. One thing that's going to be a little bit different with cilantro is that I'm going to cover it with a layer of potting mix as well. So if I'm going to cover some seeds, I want to leave a little bit of room for that to happen. So this is probably about 1 inch to 1/2 inch below my tray level. Just give it a little flat surface there. Nothing too rough. And then I have my seeds that have been soaking overnight, and I've drained them so they're ready to go. If you let them sit a little bit longer, sometimes they're easier to spread. When they're fresh, sometimes they like to kind of stick together. It's a nice even coating here. Don't want to get them too clumpy. We've got even coating of cilantro seeds. With this, I do like to also just give it a little squish there before I put more soil on. And that's mainly just because they have such a sticky seed hull that they need just a little bit extra help to get that off. So we got that going. I'm not going to spray them because they've already been soaked. Just add some more potting mix or COCO, whatever your preference is. Just fill it up almost to the top there. They can go through about 1/2 inch, 1/4 to 1/2 inch of growing medium, and they're just fine. Then we give another smush. And then so for stacking, for stacking and germination, I would take this tray, take another tray, and then just add a weight to it. And it can be a nice heavy soup can, it can be a brick. on my larger trays, I use a 15-pound brick. So don't be afraid of some extra weight in there. And it will, your cilantro seeds are going to start to, the plants are going to start to poke through the sides. When you see them starting to poke through the sides, if you take it off, you're going to see like that second picture where it's all yellow and they're poking up there. That's when it's ready for light. So any variety that you want to stack and weight and give a nice even pressure to, just put, if you have a tray of the same size, just put it right on top and add some soup cans. Trying to think what else I've added. I've used bricks, I've used hand weights, because I'm sure not going to the gym right now. Anything that's heavy, you know, don't be afraid. Even the gentle, delicate seeds, they like a little bit of a hug every now and then. So, does anyone?
Yeah. Is that potting mix totally dry?
It is a little bit damp, but it is mostly dry. Yeah.
Okay, great. We have another question.
Yeah.
What's the minimum amount of soil, or I can't say it, COIR? Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
COIR you would use in a tray?
My shallow trays are about 1 inch deep, so I would say that's probably about as low as I would go. It's about 1 inch. If you're using a larger container, you want to just make sure that don't be stingy with the soil, just because you want to get it close to that top edge for harvesting time. If you have a really big pot that you want to use, but you don't fill it up high enough, it's gonna be really hard to kind of dig down in there and cut them when it's time to, when you want to eat them. So that's kind of my rule with what kind of tray I'm going to use. It doesn't matter if it's shallow or it's deep. 1/2 inch is probably the lowest you want to go, but if it's a really big container, just make sure that you fill it up so that you have a good, nice even way to harvest it.
Okay.
So this is the list of seeds that you want to soak, and it's mainly just to get them primed to germinate quicker, and it also helps that shed that seed hull. Just kind of a basic rule of thumb is an overnight soak is good, and then just drain it and then just plant them as you would a dry seed. And you got to eat those greens. Don't be afraid to eat them. I know I've grown some really beautiful trays that I've been afraid to eat because I worked so hard on them. My favorite thing is just, I call it piggybacking. So whatever I'm eating, just put some microgreens on it. So harvesting and storage. When you are ready to harvest them, you want to keep them in an airtight container, whatever that may be. It may be a Tupperware, it may be a Ziploc bag. If they get air in them in the refrigerator, they're going to wilt really quickly. And if you get them, also if you put them towards the back, they're going to get too cold and they're going to get a little bit frosty. So I like to keep them towards the front and in a nice airtight container to use. For harvesting, you want to harvest before they get that true leaf. So like with broccoli, like right here, you can see these are still like the little heart-shaped leaves, and these are about 10 days old. There are, like everything in life, there's always exceptions to the rule, and those are basil and cilantro. And any of your herbs, you can let those go a little bit longer. It's okay to see the true leaf when you cut those. They're bigger, there's more to enjoy. So I want you to experiment, and I want you to share what's going on with your planting. If you have any questions after you've started to plant and you're like, oh, I don't know, does that look right? Is that okay? Is that mold? Is that root hairs? Let me know. And then also with the trays that I've planted tonight, I like to post a little video on Instagram or some pictures just kind of showing what's been going on from tonight, you know, all the way through harvest with the ones that we did specifically tonight. Just kind of follow along with that. I am going to show you some harvesting of some arugula. So I've got this big bad boy here. This is a 10 by 20 tray of arugula. It's awesome. And you can see right here is, it's not mold yet, but it's dampening off, which just means that it got a little bit too wet in this area. So I would just harvest around that. When you're cutting, I use a produce knife. You can use a scissors, whatever works best for you. I like scissors for basil or things that I have to be a little bit more delicate with. But as you're cutting, is one of the reasons that you want to have kind of get it pretty close to that top edge there, because your microgreens are only, these are probably about 2 inches tall. And while it's okay to eat all of the stem and everything, if you get too close in there, you're gonna get some dirt and some extra seeds and all of that stuff that you know you might not want. So I just grab it, and just with this, I use the edge of the tray as kind of my guide. And just give it a whack. And then you have some super tasty microgreens ready to go. And then eating them is the best part. So. Does anyone have any questions?
Yes, we do.
All right, I love questions.
Okay, Dawn wants to know, with artificial light, how far away from the plant do you put the lights?
It's going to depend on how strong your light is, but I generally do about 10 inches. 10 to 12 inches is kind of what I find is good.
Okay. Is that at a certain state? Is that after they germinate, or do you have them closer while they're germinating, or?
Germinate, they're going to germinate in the dark for most varieties. So you just want to find a dark cabinet, or you can use a towel and just cover, you know, just cover your dome with a towel. It doesn't have to be pitch black, but they do germinate more evenly in the dark.
Okay. And Julie wants to know, do you need to put a layer of soil or cocoa or whatever on top of pea and sunflower seeds?
No, you do not. Mostly it's just the chard, the cilantro, and beets I find really benefit from that. You don't have to. I know plenty of growers that put their cilantro right on top, and they are fine. They, you know, they may not soak it, they may not put soil on top of it, and it works just fine for them. So like I said, there's not kind of a, everyone is going to be different. I just find that for cilantro and beets and chard, putting that extra layer just helps get that seed hull off. You can always pinch it off once it's come up if you've got a few extra.
Okay, if anyone else has any questions, now is your chance. Now's the time. Send them in. I'll just give everybody a minute to do that. In the meantime, if, oh, here they come. Oh, yay. Okay, I love it when you guys do that. All of a sudden, I have all the questions.
Before you do the questions, I do have that, the slide where you see like germinate, grow, harvest. I do include that for the different varieties that you have in your kit in the slides that you're going to be getting. So you're going to have kind of visuals as well as tips and tricks for all of those varieties.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. Okay, Carrie wants to know, what is your favorite microgreen to eat?
To eat? Oh, right now it's arugula. I'm totally on an arugula kick.
Cheryl wants to know, once you cut the greens, will the plant continue growing?
It will not, with the exception of with pea shoots. If you cut above the first node on the pea shoot, it will keep going. That second round is a little bit tougher, so it's not quite as tasty. It's still super good. It's not going to be as lush and full that second time around. So yeah, after you cut it, you just want to take your COCO COIR or your hydroponic pad or whatever and just compost it, and then you're going to have you're either going to have some extra vegetables in your compost pile. You're going to just have some really awesome compost. It's kind of fun to find the little stragglers every now and then too.
Okay, and Dawn wants to know, what do you grow in your shallow trays? Are there things that grow better in the much shallower ones?
So this is one of my deeper trays right here. This one is it's a 2-inch deep tray, and then I have a shallow tray underneath it for the water. I just find in my situation, to keep enough air circulation, some of my shallow trays were drying out too fast. So I switched to a deeper tray, not specifically for a variety, but for like a location in my grow room that was getting too much airflow. I haven't found any varieties that won't grow well in the shallow tray or won't grow well in the deep tray. It's just kind of, for me, it was an airflow thing, and my grow medium was just drying out way too fast. So I needed a little bit extra to kind of extra reinforcements to keep them happy.
Okay. And another question is, so with that tray that you were just showing, it's pretty densely packed.
Yes.
And we're always told, don't water the leaves, water the base of the plant. So how do you do that? Do you just use the spray the entire time?
When you have these trays, if you're growing something that is a 10-day variety, it's going to grow pretty quickly. So once it gets those top leaves on it, just water around the edges. You can just use a little cup or something. Or if you have a tray underneath it, you can fill that tray with water and it will absorb from the bottom. So when I have this, once they start getting the leaves to kind of pop out, I switch and I lift this tray up and I fill it with water. If this was smaller, I would be able to water all the way around it and it would be fine. But because it's 10 by 20, if I water around the edges, it's not going to get it in the middle. So it's going to depend on the size of your tray. So like these you can just water around the edges and they're good to go. And honestly, for probably about day, I don't know, 5 to 8, it might not even need water. So you just kind of check it to see how it's feeling.
Okay, I think we're gonna end it there. So on behalf of the Minnesota State Horticultural Society, thank you for joining us today. Please stay safe and have fun with your grow kits.